This is a portrait of William Peter Grant. And it's another combination of a couple of processes. A lot of time when I do my artwork, I combine different processes. I'm quite experimental. And so in this piece, I have the brown is a photo etching, and then I've added hand-colored watercolor on top. And if you look carefully at the image, I also have behind this sort of lace cloth, I have the actual plot plan of where William Peter Grant's land was in Nova Scotia. And this was where my mother and I were able to go and look at his property. By this time, the house had fallen in, and all that was left was a foundation and some apple trees. But we were very lucky to actually be able to go and walk the land that William Peter Grant walked in Nova Scotia. Also here is a feather, and that also seems to be a common visual element that occurs in my work. There are quite a few feathers and birds and things like that. And it probably has to do with flight and the meanings of flight. The lower picture is a picture, another photo etching, that actually has a bit of what's called blind embossing at the top. And blind embossing merely means that it's an embossed image, a plate, without any ink on it. And this happens to be a farmhouse, again in Nova Scotia. And the story goes that when my mother and I went up to Nova Scotia, we talked to some fellows that were into genealogy, and they drove us around. And this man named Weldon Fraser said, "You know, I think you might be related to this one family." And it turned out this family were the McLeans. John McLean was the head of the household, and he had a dairy farm. And so when we were invited to his house for, I think it was like tea or something like that, and we went over to the house and we sat in the living room around and talked with them. And I could tell that they were a little wary of us. I mean, who were these people coming from Connecticut who said they were family? And so we told them our story and why we were there and what we were searching for. And wouldn't you know that John McLean pulled out the same letter that we had written by William Peter Grant. What he had done, he had such foresight. In 1907, he had made copies of the letter and sent it around to all the living relatives. And so this letter then had been passed down. And this particular farmhouse, which is in a bit of disrepair, was an original farmhouse that Grants had lived in. And so because he was a dairy farmer, you'll also